professional level. This is why.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Baseball Recruiting Deep Dive. Today, we are joined by St. John's Associate Head Coach and Pitching Coach, George Brown. George has been at St. John's since 2018. Before that, he had prior stops at Stony Brook, Monmouth, and Siena. Obviously, been at St. John's a while. Brownie, thanks for joining us, man.
Happy to be here. Appreciate Murph for having me on.
Yeah, man, we appreciate you jumping on. So, I mean, let's start. Obviously, we had to adjust today and make a time change for a quick transfer visit that you guys had. Is that kind of how you feel like this summer's been going for you?
Welcome to it. That's about it, right? Like I think any of us that's going through this, and this is what we've all adjusted to as far as the way that the environment is, and I think when they shortened the window where we could recruit high school kids, like there was a time where I was like, oh, this is sweet. I'm recruiting, 2 classes at a time instead of 4. And,
Yeah.
and you're collecting names for one. And like, now this creates a totally different dynamic where it's like, okay, we're not down at certain events now because until our team for next year is completed, then, it doesn't really matter what we're getting in 2026 or 2027. So the priorities change, but in the end, it's all the same kind of thing. You have to be adaptable. It's what we tell our players when it comes to the game. So why wouldn't it be for us?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because this is something we've talked about with every coach so far on the podcast, and just how much different a few years back, June tournaments, all the big tournaments, you saw a lot of coaches at those tournaments. And it seemed like about a year or two ago, I remember the WWBA for the junior class, it was like a ghost town in June. So is that kind of what your guys' schedule looks like now? Is that, I mean, really not just June, but until you're done cleaning up with what the class has to be, what your team looks like this coming year, you can't really look at anybody else, especially the high school guys.
No doubt. Like we can't, I guess the way I would look at it is we can't miss anything that will help us next year in exchange for something that goes further down the road. Right. So like, hey, if we were done with that next year's team, then we'd be kind of starting on our traditional 2026. It would be recruiting calendar now, getting after some juniors, collecting the names for the sophomores that we'll reach out to August 1st and whatnot. But like in the end, like it just doesn't fit to neglect what you're going to have to coach sooner. And I think what we found is it's like the line of demarcation is like that July 4th dead period, right? Like I would say by that time, like the 3rd through the 5th of July, we're going to have a pretty darn good idea of what our team is for next year. I think we have 1 or 2 pieces to go. And if we get to the tail end of that, like, oh, okay, like on the flip side, after the draft, there's going to be movement. You might have a guy go, it might have a high school guy go that you didn't expect. And you're just kind of filling in cracks. But, if we're not going to get started on that 2027 group and really start polishing away the 2026s, then you're going to look up in the middle of August and be like, wait, who did I call on August 1st? Like, I think that's a pretty challenging endeavor. So by kind of chopping it up into different sections, I think it makes it a little bit more manageable than, like, again, Murph, back when you were with it, like sitting there trying to recruit 4 to 5 classes at a time. Like that was a challenging thing, man. Like you're dealing with a lot of different variables there, where now I think even though you're dealing with some new ones, it's a little bit easier to manage because you know what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of panic around that August 1st date. Like I'm already starting to get questions about like how can we prepare for this? What do we expect? And I think everybody feels like if August 1st, if that week if you don't blow up, then you're not going to play Division I baseball. I just feel like that's the general feeling I'm getting. So just talk about how late you see that class playing out. I imagine for you're saying, hey, this is going through next summer with that class. No question.
And it is, because it's the same with our 2026 class right now. I think here's the reality. If, this is the way we attack it. if we have a list of, 22 right-handers, 25 right-handers, and 10 left-handers that I like those are all guys that within the first 36 hours, starting at probably around 8 a.m. on the first up until, mid the next day, I'm making those initial phone calls. And those are guys who are of high priority to me based on, our location and the guys who are local to us, the guys who are our number ones, guys we've had for camps that, we've been able to coach and develop relationships that way. And it's like, hey, now that we can do the recruiting side of it, this is what we think of you there. And we'll be pretty aggressive on those guys. Now, I guess the other side of it is if you have a team where you went to their camp and in the first week you don't get a phone call from them, I do think then it is pretty clear that you're not a priority for them. But by no means does it mean that you're not going to be a Division I baseball player, right? I think that's just probably your clearest piece of information from that school specifically, that you might not be on their priority radar. You might not be the highest ranking in their database for them, which is fine. We had 2 kids who we called on August 1st last year who committed within 10 days. And then another kid I didn't see until September, and he committed in December, right? So there's a vast difference between what that looks like from prospect to prospect. I just think if you have guys who are at your camps, you're going to recruit them. So if you've been around a program and they're not calling you, maybe there's your first indication.
No, George, I think it's also important. I think so many, Murph brought up, you're talking about, so many of these guys think I don't get any calls on August 1st or August 2nd or that whole week. And they think all right, well, there's no way I can go Division I. But I mean, just talk about how most of those players who may not be a priority guy August 1st of their junior year, how much development can and usually happens in that year in high school for players. How many pitchers have you seen that August 1st, you're like, yeah, he's 83, 84. I don't know if he's a guy for us yet. And then 7 months later, you see him and he's touching 92. I mean, it's there's so much development that happens in that year, right?
And honestly, I think if you want full truth serum with a lot of us college coaches, that might be the area where we have our biggest regrets, where we saw a guy early and maybe didn't like what we saw right away, or there was something there velocity wise or whatnot that just, or, pre-growth spurt, and you wrote him off a little bit too soon. And then you look up 8 months later and you're like, son of a man, got a lot better. And every time we forget that guys, God forbid, players get better, right?
Yep.
It's what we tell them to do. And then when they do it, we're almost surprised sometimes. So I would say that's a huge thing on our end, is trying to, as much as possible with our board and our recruiting system, to take notes on guys and see when they progress. If we can see when they grow and get better over time, the arrow's pointing up. It's when those guys kind of plateau for 6 to 9 months at a time. Then you might have a pretty decent idea of what they're going to be. Maybe.
Yeah.
So with those classes, I mean, there used to be a time, obviously, when transfers didn't factor into this, and you knew what you were looking for and where you were planning to spend in each class. Is that kind of a daily conversation now up until June 30th, where you're going to spend money on certain positions in each class, whether it be a transfer or the 26, 27 class?
So I think, it's not like a groundbreaking statement, but I think most of us recruit up the middle of the field and then guys who can hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So very rarely you're going to go get a high school second baseman or anything like that. I think that maybe shifts a tad when you're talking about the college level of hey, this guy played 2 years, played second base and did it at a 980 clip. Okay, we can go recruit a second baseman. But as a general rule, if you're a second baseman, so you're recruiting catchers, pitchers, shortstops, and center fielders, and then you fan them out from there, and then the guys who can really hit. So it doesn't, that never changes globally, but I think the one that is a constantly evolving conversation is the transfer, or the transfer / junior college, whatever you want to call that market. When we're building our immediate team, that's where we're going to get really specific about what our needs are.
So George, I one thing I've been asking every coach on here, because I think everyone thinks about in recruiting what they have to do to impress a coach, but they don't ever think about the mannerisms or the mannerisms or the habits they have that can be like massive red flags for coaches. So when you're out on the trail and you're watching guys, what are some of those red flags for you where you see that and you start thinking, I don't know if this guy's a guy we can recruit anymore?
Number one, interaction with your parents. If you don't respect your mother and your father, you're sure as hell not going to respect me.
Sure.
So if you got kids who pop off to mom and dad or just treat them in a way that there's not a level of respect there, like why would I expect you to treat me any different? And shame on me if I bring you into our program and you're uncoachable and you're obstinate and like, well, the writing was on the wall right there. I would say the next progression from there is even before you talk about their interaction with their coaches. I would say the way they interact with their teammates. I think, and it's not about being buddy. It's not about being, but you can just have different levels of roles that guys play in a dugout and on a team. Because if you have, the gregarious personality who's just hanging out with everybody, that can be a positive or a negative. So it's just diving into the day-to-day interactions with what their teammates are. And that's where I think, look, you're not going to find those ones out at field 3 at East Cobb, right? Like that's where everybody's kind of on their best behavior. That's where if you want to find out the real answer, you throw on an unmarked hoodie and a hat that doesn't say your school on it, and you go down the road on either a high school game or an off-site game at a tournament that they don't know you're going to be at. Like that's where you're going to find those pieces of information out. You'll find that out a lot easier than you think, or you just ask around and ask their high school coach. I think the element of speaking to the high school coaches has faded a little bit because we see so much on the travel circuit.
Yeah.
But I would say a lot of our evaluation from a skill standpoint is going to happen during the summer, right? Because you're going to see probably a better quality of player on a day-to-day. But on top of that, like these are people that are helping them get recruited. So you're not going to get a lot of poor character evaluations from a summer coach. At least that's what we've seen. What we do see is there's high school coaches that are like, yeah, no, he's a tough one. And it's like, okay, that's my first red flag, right?
Yeah.
It's the guy, we have an incoming kid from Jersey who, his high school coach, I think he wants to adopt him. Like you hear the way he talks about him as a person, not as a player, but as a person. Like that's what we want to hear, because that high school coach is probably getting paid $5,000 and teaches science in period 3, as opposed to a person who's really trying to get them committed to a school. So I think you'll get a little bit more of an honest character evaluation there.
Yeah. And on the flip side, baseball wise, when recruiting a kid, let's talk about what are some of the priorities when you're out recruiting an arm. What are some of the goals that you're trying to find in a kid, certain metrics, velocity, and all that?
So I've been very lucky in my stops coaching to coach for and be around a lot of really smart people. So through any coach will tell you a good coach is a good thief. So being able to steal all the ideas from other people who are much more intelligent than I am and apply them to my recruiting philosophy. So a lot of this is derived from Coach Blankmeyer, but then a few other people that I coach for and just spoke to from an evaluation standpoint, even some scouts. So for me, it's a checklist that kind of goes down. Number one, like I want winners and competitors. Like if you have a kid who, you talk to a high school coach and it's like, yeah, he's been on varsity since freshman year and he's won 26 games. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm into that. Like, I don't know what level it is or where it is. Like if a dude wins, dude wins. That's an inherent ability to compete and care about the things that matter. And usually those kids have good baseball skills. Like they hold runners, they do some of the intangibles. I'll talk about it a little bit more in a sec. Number 2, I want to see something about the fastball that tells me that it's going to differentiate. Now that can be velocity. It can be some of the advanced metrics where we talk about, some carry and some ability to spin at the top of the zone or have a raw high spin rate or some advanced metrics that a TrackMan we trend towards believing TrackMan a little bit more aggressively. I just want to see something about that pitch that tells me it's going to play at the college level. Yeah, so like any of your advanced analytics, the things that the machines will tell you, that not just a radar gun will tell you, but I think you want to see something about the fastball that separates, something that's different, something that's unique, or as unique as we can get it outside of the bell curve, because those guys who kind of live in the middle, they don't have a lot of margin for error.
I want to stop you there for 1 second.
Yeah.
So you and I were at a game probably a month ago or so, and we were talking about Andrew McGee from Monmouth, who I faced, and you were his pitching coach at the time, and he was 80 to 83 from what I remember, maybe up to 85.
Yeah.
And it seemed like he was pitcher of the week every single week in the league. And how did the recruiting happen to obviously find him when you didn't have the data? Was it just purely?
So I didn't recruit Andrew. I just.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and this is where, like, I guess if you go down a different track, but like one of the things I think you see with the machines, and whether it be TrackMan or anything that you can use, what it does is it shortens the identification, evaluation, and coaching process, because what we can do is find out what something is a lot faster. Mm-hmm. It's not any different. Like, it's not like 4-seam and 2-seam fastballs were invented by TrackMan. Like, those were always a different thing. But now what we can do is we can quantify things a lot quicker. We can put guys into different buckets and understand how they're going to be successful. Where, like, the age old, like, hey, throw at the bottom of the zone. Well, that doesn't work for everybody. And like for some dudes, like we've had a lot of guys who come through our program who every time they're between the knee and the the quad, they get absolutely whacked. Well, it's because their stuff doesn't play there. It visually doesn't work. Or between it. So those types of dudes, like the way that you can bucket guys and understand what they are, that's where like the technology has shortened the timeline on a lot of ways.
On the pitcher,
so I first kind of brought up the competitiveness aspect. Second is I want to see something about the fastball that makes a guy special. Third, I want to see a replaceable pitch. So whether that is a breaking ball or a changeup, me personally, I'd rather teach the changeup and recruit the breaking ball, because you get to our level, you can't throw fastball every time, and if kind of the inverse of, hey, you're going to need to throw fastball eventually. So I want to see a guy whose fastball has something to it that can differentiate itself. You can't do that every pitch unless you're super, super, super special. And even then, a lot of those guys, eventually get found out. So I would say something about a breaking ball or a changeup that is interchangeable with the fastball. We can throw it in a 2-1, 2-0, 3-1, 1-0 count and actually be able to use it that way. From a metric perspective, I lean more heavily on the breaking ball metrics than on anything with a changeup, and that was kind of my specialty as a player. I had a pretty darn good changeup, so I was able to use that at a little bit of a different level that I feel pretty comfortable teaching that and helping guys along with that. So I'd rather recruit the breaking ball, and I think a lot of guys, if they don't spin it by 19, it's pretty tough to start developing that later in your career. I want to see athleticism is the fourth bullet point, and that extends out from
in a pitcher. Pitchers are athletes.
Because I think those guys get better. Over time, you've got your one-trick ponies. I know you brought up Andrew McGee before. Like, that was a dude who was like sneaky athletic, which actually those are kind of some of my other favorite guys who, like, maybe they don't look in a uniform like you'd expect, like the Glass now, where it's just the prototype, but like guys who if you throw a basketball at them, they're not going to go like that. Like guys who can actually do more than just pitch. Because it's really tough to take bad athletes and get them better. And that's when it comes to fielding their position or getting quicker to the plate or even just being adaptable in what we try to do. I want to see the intangibles. So the intangibles as it is, like I brought up a couple times, but like fielding your position or holding runners or just having feel for the game. And that extends out into like, you know, what you're able to do as a competitor and what you're able to do as a teammate and whatnot. Like, cause you know, guys who don't have feel. And that often is the case for pitching, but also for personality. So like you don't want to teach a person to be an entirely new person when you bring them into your organization.
Yeah.
The last thing, and this is like, I've softened over time because I can like call myself out on guys that I've missed because I was like way too big of a stickler on this, but like cleanliness in the arm. I don't want to see any hitches, pauses, jabs, hooks as much as possible, but I've softened on that a little bit. Because like when I first got here, this is a name I'm sure you'll remember, Murph. I watched a left-hander from New Jersey that he just got everybody out, punched everybody out, threw a million strikes, but it was like I just didn't like the backside, like what it did. It just wasn't something that I would design. And that was Trey Dombrowski. I think he ended up being a 4th rounder.
Yeah.
So you sit there and you're just like, all right, well, these are guidelines as opposed to rules. And like I kind of outthought myself on a guy that I really liked everything else he did. And so that one's kind of moved down the line. Now, the biggest one, I don't like pauses. I don't like when the arm stops here because I think a lot of those guys don't command it. There's some injury risk that I just want to see fluidity, and that kind of goes into the athleticism space. So
Yeah.
Hey, there's other things, but like if I can check off 5 of those 6, I probably got myself a guy.
Yeah. Yeah, there was something else you said to me. I don't even know if you remember it. It was probably 2 summers ago at Diamond Nation. We were just kind of talking about pitching and development. And you said you just want to spend time with your pitchers. Just take one night a week, go watch a baseball game together. Like just turn on the TV, watch, talk about it, because you just at the time you were saying you didn't feel like kids just understood how to pitch and how to do it well enough. So how much is that? Have you brought that into your development now where you have classroom settings talking about setting up hitters and less about the data and the on-field stuff where it's like, hey, how do I get guys out?
So one of the toughest things is we try to do as much as we can as like a reflection of the game and do it when the motions aren't high, but in all reality, like it's really tough to get with the amount of time that we have or don't have with these guys, like 20 of them in a room and sit there and just watch a game for 3.5 hours. Guys have class, guys. So it is tougher than I would like it to be to do that. But like the focus on talking the game is something like since we spoke it's been a huge emphasis in what we're trying to do because we sit here and get mad at kids because and I think Murph, you'd probably agree with this. Like we get more skilled players than we've ever gotten. They are more skilled in their ability to do things. But they suck at baseball and they don't understand the game. Like that's like where if like you went in a time machine 15 years ago, you'd get guys who showed up at St. John's like me who like I understood the game. I was a center field, but I was 154 pounds. And if you put 135 on a rack, like I was going to get folded.
That sounds like me, George. That sounds like me.
Yeah, man. Like, so like that was, but like we have such better training at younger ages. But I implore any coach, if you have a camp or you're working a camp, the cheat code for me of like this is like shows how little guys understand. Go around if you have like 8 pitchers is usually a pretty good sweet spot number and say, all right, hey, how hard do you throw? Boom, boom. And they'll go, yeah, I'm 84, 86. I'll touch 88. Or, hey, I throw 90. I hit 90 once. My running gun or my pull down is this. Okay, great. Awesome. And it's just to show guys what their understanding is. Because the next question you say, all right, what's your time to the plate? And the look that you get, because guys don't get taught it. Like they don't understand like that's an even like a thing that actually matters. And we go through that and I've gotten 0.5. I've gotten second. No, it's actually the worst answer I got? 4 seconds.
No.
Just a walk to second base. That's all you gotta do.
You realize if I blew a whistle and told you to run home, you'd get there in under 4 seconds, right?
Yep.
But in the end, who are we mad? Should we be mad at 16-year-olds for that? Or should we be mad kind of at all of ourselves for creating this establishment and this place that doesn't teach the right stuff? Like, hey, guys can throw and guys can do things better and different, but that's like becomes one of the hardest challenges to overcome is, okay, if I get a kid on campus who's a 175 to the dish and it's a track meet every time he gets out there, right? And this is where, you know, if you are working with the wrong facilities or the wrong trainers, like you'll butt heads, because what's the first thing I'm going to say as a pitching coach? Dude, we need that thing under a 1.4.
Yeah.
1.35 or below is like our sweet spot. But like if it can be 1.3 something, like we're in the realm of like, okay, we can rely on our catcher a little bit. Well, as soon as and I think we probably devalue this. If you go from a 1.75 to a 1.32 in one pitch, think about what has to change in your delivery and your timing and your handbrake and your leg lift and all these things just to take 0.4 seconds off of a delivery. Yeah. Well, now we just expect them to still be good.
Right. And throw strikes.
And throw at the same velocity and all these. It's kind of not fair. So we need to take a little time with that and have a little understanding that, like, that's not just like snap your fingers and now you just want to be a 1.35. So when we get the worst thing for us there is like, okay, a guy's velocity dips a little bit, or command dips a little bit, and then he immediately thinks like, oh, can I pitch here? Or am I good enough to do this? Or like all the doubts start creeping in that you've never had in your whole life. And then you go back to your facility and they say, well, your leg lift is too low. You're not getting into your lower half. Do that. And all of a sudden we get back a 1.85. Velocity's back up. And it's like, well, I get it. Like you can't sacrifice your stuff to the plate so much that you don't get anybody out in order to have that guy not steal. But it's also not a good reason to be bad at it. So we need to find, like, we watch a lot of guys in the big leagues at a 1.35 throw 100.
Yeah.
So you're not capable? Okay, well, I guess you're not the athlete or the person that we want you to be. So I think that's where like the facilities and the college coaches butt heads a little bit too much there, because it's just not, that's throwing, and throwing is a part of baseball, but it's also not pitching. Pitching is a lot different than just throwing. And I think that becomes a challenge if you don't have a good relationship with the outside coaches, whether it's a facility or a high school coach or say a former pro that they did lessons with. Like, those are the people that got them to your school. Why wouldn't they trust them? Yeah. In the same vein, we should all be pulling in the same direction, I hope.
Yeah. Would you say that's the biggest challenge you have right now for an incoming freshman? Obviously, there's other battles with academics and schedule and lifting and everything else that comes within a day. But is that one of the things that's toughest for you as a pitching guy to kind of get out of the arms?
So I think the toughest thing, and the first time they get punched in the mouth competitively, that's the toughest thing.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing in most situations with guys who haven't failed a whole ton. Yeah. And it's almost the worst thing, and this is going to sound crazy, the worst thing, almost, not completely, but almost, is guys who are so good in the fall as freshmen that they don't get punched in the face. Because I can assure you, you're going to go to the spring and get punched in the face, and now you're going to ask yourself the questions that all the other guys ask themselves in September, and you're going to ask yourself that in February and March, where now you have to get another jersey out, and we can't go like, hey, roll it.
Yeah.
Like that gets really hard, because you're asking for something that a lot of those kids aren't emotionally and mentally prepared to do. Like, how many kids have really struggled and failed for a prolonged amount of time and then still shown up as Division I athletes? It's kind of like uncommon. So like, you wouldn't think that a lot of guys, you'd think, oh, well, they're an athlete, they can fail. I think that is the hardest hurdle to overcome, is guys when they get punched in the mouth for the first time.
Yeah. I mean, George, I think what you're bringing up is just kind of the one thing that I feel like, and I agree with you, I feel like the game players have gotten more skilled, while at the same time, the baseball IQ seems to be lower or getting lower. The most important thing for any baseball player is just how they handle the mental side of the game, like the ups and downs. You're going to go 0 for 4. You're going to give up 2 home runs in the first inning. And then how do you respond? How do you prepare your guys in the fall? I know you said, obviously, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just dominate the fall, and you're like, oh well, I hope he doesn't get punched in the face in the spring. how do you guys?
Or maybe we
them?
stink. I don't know. Like no matter what, one of the coaches is pissed because if if I'm with our hitting coach and we give up 13 runs, like, oh, our pitcher's stink, and he's silently like, oh, swinging the bat pretty good.
Yeah,
it's both sides, but the challenge there is going to be when if they are freshmen who don't know the game, that's on us for recruiting them similarly, and also the people who've been around. If they're seniors who don't know the game, that's on me. Like that's my if I haven't done anything between now and then, and I think oftentimes we look at these kids and we're hypercritical of them. Like I'll throw one out there, Murph. So how old are you?
34.
Okay, so I'm 39. So we're like kind of on the same. Yeah. A lot happened in that 5 years, but so we chirp all these kids for like their Instagram posts, like, oh, humbled and blessed and all that stuff, and we like kind of tongue in cheek like laugh at like their commitment posts. Well, do we really want like all of our AIM away messages posted like forever?
Absolutely not.
That would be a really, really I think for a lot of us.
Don't give anyone any ideas. That's probably out there somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully the cloud didn't exist back then, because if that was a thing, the amount of like Fall Out Boy and Taking Back Sunday lyrics that I posted when I was 14, like it's not. It's something that we give a lot. We don't expect as much from ourselves as we do from 15 and 16-year-olds. So eventually, like, it has to be the people around them that take responsibility. And when that becomes you, like, you can't look up and down your bench and be like, you guys don't have any feel. You guys don't get it. And it's like, well, teach us then.
Yeah.
That becomes our fault.
Yeah.
So over time, I think we hope to see an evolution in like what guys understand and like the conversations they have about the game at the age of 22 should be vastly different than when they have them at 18.
Yeah. Yeah, it all makes sense. Let's talk a little bit just about the program in general. Obviously, you've been there. What's this, going into your 7th year? Is that right?
Into my 9th year.
Oh, okay. So 29. Yeah. So going into your 9th year, recruiting wise, what are some of the biggest draws you've seen to the university that like parents and recruits are just really drawn to? And I guess as a coaching staff, like what are some of the big selling points for you guys?
Well, I would say with our program, it's evolved over time. And, for us, I think we've had the same type of kids who have been successful here for a long time. Kids who care about the game of baseball, who want to develop, win championships and get an opportunity in professional baseball, and who care about getting a good education. And I think the outside of it, like the ability to, get a business degree in the capital of the world, the financial capital of the world, to have access to some of the things that we do being in New York, it's all really cool. But I think the personality of the kid has not changed, because it's the kids that all want the same thing. If they care a lot about baseball and getting a great education, I say it to all their recruits. So I have no problem saying to you, if you want to be party boy, like, this might not be the place for you. Like it's a great place to go to school. You're going to develop lasting relationships, and you're going to have a great time here with the people around you. But if the social aspect of your college experience is number one, like, you're probably not going to like it here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, you guys have obviously been successful there, and like, you know your formula and you know the type of kids you're looking for. So obviously over time that, it makes it a little bit easier to know if a kid's going to be a fit, pretty early in that process for you.
Yeah. And I mean, granted, you're 12 miles from New York City, from Manhattan. Yeah. Like, it's obviously like, no, there are things to do here. I would say if you want a sushi pizza with a vanilla Dr. Pepper at 30 in the morning, you can find it. Like, there's everything here. But the reality is, like, being able to go to hoops games, like that's a huge bonding experience for our guys, and going to the Garden and things like that. And just being around New York and understanding what it is huge. But if the outskirt parts are the most important to you, I would say pretty quickly guys find out that this isn't a great fit for them.
Mhm.
That, if baseball is not one of the two most important things in your life outside of, family or education and the baseball, like it's going to be a tough go for a lot of guys.
And I think, George, like all of us have played with a lot of really good players, and anyone who's like a starter at St. John's or any other good Division I program, those aren't the guys whose number one priority is like, all right, well, where can I go out and have fun? Like that's maybe number 3 or 4 down the line, right? But the guys who that's their number one priority, those are typically the guys who, like 2 years into their career, they say, I don't really want to play anymore. They're joining a fraternity. Nothing wrong with that, but that wasn't my goal. My goal was to be in the starting lineup and be a baseball player. And so I think what you're really like, what you're saying is like, well, if that's what you want, then that's not going to be kind of the place you want to come. But in general, like you don't want that guy anyway, right?
Exactly. And that's why we're really open and honest with that part of the conversation right away. Like if again, we don't have college football, right? So if you want like a huge part of what you do is like those 8 Saturdays a year that you get to tailgate and do all the, like, if that's that important, like don't convince yourself to come here because of that, because you're not going to be happy if it's that important. Just like the weather aspect too. Like if you're not tough enough to play in the cold, I'll say it as a Northeastern guy. Like if you need to run to the heat just to play the game, like, hey, they play postseason baseball in New York and Boston, so you might be able to want to be able to do that. But like if that is something that's offensive to you as a player or as a recruit, like you probably won't like being coached by me, because I'm probably going to say a lot more harsh things to you than you have to be tough to play in some cold.
Yeah. And what about academically? What GPAs are you targeting? Are there certain course levels that need to be taken? How does that, like, what makes a kid a no-brainer for you guys academically?
So we're pretty unique on that one. So I would say if you can get through the eligibility center, our record of developing student athletes and doing well in the classroom, like we've got guys who have come in with 2.5, 2.6 GPAs out of high school that graduate with a 3.5. We had a 3.62 team GPA last year. Wow. Now, there's a few things that we do specifically to make sure that happens. But on top of it, it's recruiting the right kids. Like I've never done a test. I've never written a paper. All we do is set up systems for these kids to have as much success as humanly possible. And so it basically boils down to if you're unsuccessful academically at St. John's, it's because you made a clear decision that you didn't want to be successful. And we've had obviously a huge amount of success recruiting the right people. Now, as far as the majors go, I would say the bulk of our team is probably in the business school. I think it's about like 55% in a given year is in the business school. We have quite a few criminal justice, sport management, and then we've had, sprinkle in your other like education, sciences. But I think with the proximity to New York, sport management and business are huge, because, we've got guys who work at Barclays, MSG, with MLB. Belmont Park is 4 miles away. Citi Field, Yankee Stadium. Like I think every single one of our managers with our team have all worked at Citi Field, and a lot of them have full-time employment there now too, in marketing or ticketing or things like that. So I think being around sports and around the business aspect of that is huge for a lot of those guys too.
George, thanks for taking the time today. I know you got more stuff coming up here soon, but really appreciate you having on. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I appreciate you guys hanging with me on the Wi-Fi. I don't know. I like I said, I got to get to our sport admin and see what we got there, or maybe maybe get a booster in our lounge just so the guys can.
There will be a changing background throughout the podcast, depending on where George is. But George, thanks for doing it, man.